Stitch People, and welcome to the Stitch People podcast. I'm Lizzy Bean, your host and the founder of Stitch People, where our goal with cross-stitching is to inspire your personal creativity, and our goal with podcasting is to help you make some new friends while you're at it. Today's episode is an interview with Spencer Bean, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend. He is my husband, my life partner, my business partner, and co-founder of Stitch People. I wanted to interview him first so that you all could get to know us a little better as being kind of the primary people behind the scenes, though our team has grown quite a bit in the last few years. We've got a nice handful of folks on our team who we could not appreciate more. But we wanted to give you a little bit of a history of Stitch People and what it's all about, what this podcast is, and what we do and who we are. So I hope you enjoy it. I sure enjoy everything about Spencer, and I know you will too. So without further ado, on to the episode. Hello, Spencer Bean.
Hello, Lizzy Bean.
How are you today?
I'm dandy. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. I've had my caffeine and I'm rearing and ready to go.
It's almost like we had that caffeine together.
Imagine that.
So for those of you listening or watching, not in real time, which is all of you, Spencer and I are here to give you your first Stitch People podcast interview. And as we often do, which you may not know, little known fact, we each have our own separate office in the same house. And we will often participate in meetings and Zoom calls and things from separate rooms just because it's a little cleaner for all participants and better audio, better video. So we thought, why not do the same for this one?
Although you've got a much cooler background wallpaper than I do. I've just got a blank wall here.
I do. I have jungle wallpaper, multicolored jungle wallpaper. And thanks to you, I feel much more confident about having it on display. For a lot of classes, I would like put up a plain backdrop, like gray or a solid color. Spencer was like, pretty sure that wallpaper is very you. Should probably display that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
And it's a lot less work for me. So I'm grateful. Backdrops are cumbersome. So how are you? How are you down there in your office?
I'm great. How are you up there in your office?
I am doing great. And I can't wait to chat with you about all things Stitch People. So as you know, but I'm going to explain for listeners,
Sure.
The reason I wanted you to be the first interview subject of the Stitch People podcast is because I want people to get to know us a little bit and get to know Stitch People's story a little bit. And with this being sort of the pilot episode, I thought what better way to get going with these podcast interviews than with kind of giving everybody the same Stitch People-y foundation from which to start as far as Stitch People's history is concerned. And since you and I started this thing, getting to know us a little bit and our story with each other, with Stitch People, all of that. So without further ado, shall we jump in to talking about Stitch People?
Let's.
So Spence, why don't you tell us what is Stitch People and how did it get started?
Ooh, Stitch People. Well, it's funny. You and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, what is Stitch People?
Yeah.
What is it all about?
It got pretty existential, to be honest.
It got very existential. We were like going beyond what do we just do and more kind of like, why do we do it?
What's the point?
Yeah, what we do is design and sell cross stitch patterns for family portraits specifically. So kind of a niche within the cross stitch space.
Right.
But that's what we do. Why we do it is kind of a different story. I think that, well, let me back up to where we started. So back in 2011, I think it was, you were finishing college and working a job as a graphic designer and just really kind of unhappy as you realized that you were staring down the barrel of graduating from college, already being married, having dogs, owning a house, that you had kind of checked all of the boxes.
It sent me spinning, spiraling even.
And you saw a magazine, a Martha Stewart magazine that had some kind of cross-stitch family portrait concepts, and it was just single spread, and you went, that's cute. I remember cross-stitch.
Yeah.
and didn't like the patterns, and so designed your own.
Mhm.
And I remember, do you remember what like your actual first project was? Was it the portrait for your family for Christmas?
Well, for
Or did you
context,
play around with it first?
there were 3 that were my first ones, and I can't remember which one of those 3 was my first ones. I made one
was the actual
for my
first?
parents that was my mom and dad and their dog, and you and me, and at the time we only had 2 dogs, and then my sister and her husband and their 2 cats. I think they had 2 cats at the time. And then I made one of you and me and the 2 dogs for us, and I made one of my sister and her husband and their cats for them. So I just made those 3, but I can't remember what I did first. My guess is, I don't know, if you had to pay me $1 million to come up with an answer, I don't know that I could, because I could see me starting with ours to like practice, because I don't care. My standards for the one I give myself would be lower. But at the same time, I could also see myself starting with the big one to make sure that I did it in time for Christmas. So anyway, that was my first
guess,
set, at least.
If I had to take
for my personal family, you know.
Yeah, if I had to take a gander, I would say it was probably the one of us. Especially with something new like that, my inclination is to say that you would have
done like
tried,
a test.
Yeah, tried it out. And what's funny is we're coming up literally on 10 years.
I can't.
That first one. So like our guess is as good as anybody's. But I remember you made those and like gave them to your family, and they were really cool. Yeah. And we were sitting at your parents' house on Christmas Day. Your mom had just opened it. It was wonderfully and well received.
Yeah, as they often are.
As they often are. And I remember thinking,
dare I say always.
I actually, the situations where they are not well received are very few and far between. And it's usually when someone gifts a portrait to someone who just doesn't understand,
right?
What goes into something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember sitting there on Christmas Day, 2011, and you had just gifted this portrait. It went over really, really well. And my brain just started thinking as we were, between activities on Christmas. And I thought, I wonder, like, what could you call this? If you were to sell this, not that you had to, but if you were to sell it, what would you call it? What would a brand name be?
Yeah.
And that's the day we came up with the name Stitch People.
Mm-hmm.
And registered the domain name that day, and kind of started building this brand. We had really no idea what it would be other than cross-stitch family portraits.
Right.
And here we are 10 years later.
Yeah.
It's kind of really weird to think about.
And yeah, that's true. And we liked the name Stitch People because it was cute. But it also, as we got to thinking about it, I like to think that Stitch People is a 3-part meaning. So quite obviously, we do cross-stitch family portraits and cross-stitch family portrait patterns. So the product is stitched people, right? Cross-stitched little people. That's the activity. That's the whole thing. But
speaks for itself.
Right, exactly.
Regard, right?
It's like, selling facial tissues. It is what it is, right? Or
right.
I don't know, it just is what it is. I was just thinking of like Kleenex and how we've had that conversation of like, do we want Stitch People to become like, is that just our brand or is that the name of the whole genre? Anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
Sure.
So meaning number 1, it's cross-stitched people, period. Meaning number 2, it is the person doing it. We are the Stitch People, the people who stitch, right? And then meaning number 3 is it zooms out even one step further, where we stitch people together, we stitch hearts together, we stitch minds together by creating these gifts that we give to our loved ones, and ultimately creating heirlooms that hopefully will be cherished for a good long time and maybe even passed down through generations. But it kind of goes from the literal to the figurative to the very illustrative, and it's that third meaning that I like the most, because like we mentioned earlier, it's very, very rare that a Stitch People portrait is ill-received. Usually it results in, oh my gosh, that's us, that's me, oh my gosh,
right.
And you got my hair and you got my outfit, and oh my gosh, you got little Fifi the dog, oh my gosh. And then comes the realization of, did you make this? You made this? Oh my gosh. Like the number of times we have had that reaction ourselves or seen videos to that effect. Like even just pretending, it gives me chills because they immediately just become so meaningful to people. And then when they realize, the amount of time and effort and thought that you put into creating this for them, that's, it just blows people's minds for something so, it's just like a little hug on fabric, it's just like this really warm, thoughtful, meaningful thing. And I love that because also, it's a really good way to include people who you might not otherwise be able to get in a family portrait. And that can be sensitive sometimes. Sometimes families are fractured. Sometimes a family member lives far away. Sometimes a family member or a beloved pet has recently passed. And so you don't want to go take a family portrait because dad's not around anymore because, Fido just died a month ago. But when you stitch a portrait, there's a little more creative leeway, and you can include loved ones who've departed, and you can maybe put them in a different outfit. Or we've seen portraits where people include a dog with like a little halo around their head. So you still get that complete family, and it triggers your imagination a little bit because it's not just a literal photo, and it gets you thinking about them in just a little bit of a different way. So. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's why I love Stitch People, and I will get off my soapbox now.
Well, and what I love especially about it is you have it is unlike most gifts that I think are given today because it's so easy to go to the store, even easier to jump on Amazon and just Google something that the person is interested in. Mm-hmm. That looks great, good reviews, buy it. Have it gift wrapped for me, and then give it on the day.
Have a note card printed out for me.
Right. Whether that's a birthday or holiday or whatever it is, that's really easy. And honestly, that's my preferred method of gifting.
It's so easy. Why not?
It is so easy. And so that's why I think these handmade gifts, these handmade heirlooms and portraits really pack such a special punch because of the time that it takes to design it, the time it takes to get all of those details just right, the time it takes to actually stitch it and then frame it and then gift wrap. Like you're literally making something from scratch.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen a whole lot these days when it comes to gift giving. So I just think it's extra special for that reason.
No, I agree. And handmaking is a lost art. It's a dying art. People, like you said, it's hard to find that time. So when someone not only finds the time, but chooses to use it for something for you, that's really special. And that's all I have to say about that.
It reminds me of we met someone a few years back and spent a lovely afternoon with them, and they're an author. And at the end of that visit, I remember she said to us, "Thank you for your gift of time." And that's really stuck with me ever since. And time is kind of the most precious resource that we have. And so, yes, you're doing all those things I just said. You are designing, you are stitching, you are gift wrapping, you're doing all of that.
Yeah.
And so the end product is hung on the wall or, put on a bookcase or something. But it really is just a representation of the time that it took someone to sit down and look at a picture of you or kind of think through what they wanted you to look like and then do the actual stitching. The portrait itself is cool, but it really is the time that it took to get you that portrait that I think is the most
thoughtfulness.
Yeah, I think that's the most special of all.
I agree. As you listeners can hear, Spencer and I really love Stitch People for more than just cross stitching. It's about so much more than just the craft for us, and that's what really keeps us going. I would love to ask you, Spencer, in that vein, what has been one of the most surprising things to you about Stitch People, about building this business, about doing this? I know for context, Spencer and I are both very entrepreneurial. Spencer majored in information systems, which is kind of like computer science meets an MBA. He got a master's in that. So it's like business and tech. And I did a music major, but a business entrepreneurship minor. So you and I were in a lot of entrepreneurship classes. We always wanted to start a business. We always figured it would be like an app or something, something techie and cool and hip. But we wound up with a cross stitch business. So what has been something surprising to you? What would you say has been the most surprising thing to you about doing Stitch People, growing Stitch People, and really digging deep into the crafting world?
That's a very interesting question. So when I was going to college and studying information systems, my goal was to get into corporate America and kind of work my way up the corporate ladder,
right?
Get a bunch of connections that I would then use to leave corporate America and kind of leverage those connections to start my own little enterprise, get that off the ground and kind of grow that. And when I left college, I had a job in I didn't go corporate America. I did an internship in corporate America, and it didn't really fit for me. And so,
but it was just the best.
It was.
We lived in Manhattan for a summer. I just have to say,
lovely summer. We lived at 34th and Second.
Second, yeah,
right in Midtown. It was
Grand Central Station was
so
like
great.
Our closest subways. It was just dreams come true.
But it kind of goes to show that like we loved New York, had an offer to go back after graduation, and it just didn't feel right.
We wanted to live there, but for the right reason.
Yeah. And so we ended up staying in Utah, and I went to work for a software company here locally that only lasted about a year working at that company.
Not the company.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. The company's still going. Company's going well. I only lasted a year at this company because again, it didn't quite fit what I wanted to do. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I did some freelance web development after that and helped people build websites and stuff. And that's about the time that like Stitch People was really starting to kind of gain some traction. But what's been most surprising to me about Stitch People is that having gone from corporate America, I was never truly in corporate America. One internship for 3 months does not count.
But I mean, you got a taste of that.
Yeah, I got a taste of that.
You got thrown into that, and then you went to the startup world.
Got the startup world. You
kind of started big and went small.
And the startup world, I mean, I was at a company that had, raised a few rounds of funding already. And so it was a big company. There were probably 100 people there. And so going from like a several thousand, I mean, probably tens of thousands of employees worldwide to just 100 employees locally down to like just you and me.
To you, then you did freelance where you were kind of working for clients to just you, but then, but you weren't even really doing your own thing. You were doing things for other people, helping them with their projects, their websites.
True. Right.
And then down to like completely autonomous.
Yeah, totally autonomous. And what I back to your original question of what has been the most surprising, honestly, the customers and like the community that we've built around Stitch People for me has been the most surprising thing.
Yeah.
Because when you think of corporate America, when you think of even startup world, it tends to be very organization focused. You're dealing with clients and you want them to be happy, but the experience of working in those tends to be kind of organizational focused. And the experience of working in Stitch People is almost completely customer focused. And I love that. I didn't know that you could rally a group of people together around something that they loved and just like take it off. That's a weird way to say that, but like to take off this idea and just see what people do with it and watch people's creativity just kind of run wild with an idea and to kind of help shepherd people through that creative process. How satisfying that is to watch was the thing I think that's been most surprising to me.
I love that. Yeah.
How about you? I want to ask you the same thing.
Well, honestly, my answer would be very similar. Like I said, we thought we would do something flashy and techie, and which even an app, while you are making an app for a customer, so much of that work is internal based. It's about the functionality of the thing. It's about the design of the thing. You're having meetings about buttons and colors and placement and, code, and it is for the customer, but it's about the thing. Cross-stitching is a tradition that's been around for centuries. It's something that people have done for a really long time. And also, it's so simple. It is what it is. And I love that idea that creativity loves constraints, right? Creativity flourishes within boundaries. That's why you have to get creative. That's
Right.
If all
Yeah.
of your options were available to you, well, then anything is possible. But if you are only working with fabric and a needle and some different colors of floss, like, okay, now I have to be creative. Now I have to figure out how to utilize these materials. And with cross stitching, it's just the same simple X-shaped, 2 diagonals, repeated, which a lot of people might find really mundane, but with patience and with concerted effort and with letting yourself think outside the box, which is something I'm always talking about in Stitch People, because a lot of my designs aren't traditional. I just do whatever the heck I want.
They're literally outside the box.
They're literally outside the lines.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody, but I'm not, because I want you to feel empowered to do the same thing. And so your answer had a little context. I too will give a little.
Please.
So
yes.
when you mentioned that I started doing Stitch People stuff end of college, it was my last official semester. I had an internship to do the semester after that, and that's when I graduated 2012. But end of 2011, you're right. I had been on this type A personality treadmill, and I did all the things, and I was paralyzed by the option of, like I mentioned before, anything was possible now. It's like I graduated college or high school. I was about to graduate college. I had a pretty good GPA that I was satisfied with. I was married. We had adopted dogs. We bought a house. I did all the things, and I was 21 years old. So it was like, okay.
What now?
So it was like, cool, I have another 80 years. Okay. Like, now what? And we weren't ready for kids.
Those who are unaware, Lizzy plans to live to 100.
Oh, yes. That's my longest long-term goal. Hopefully more. I mean, wouldn't that be rad? Like, okay, I'm just going to tangent for a second here. This is something I feel very passionately about. I think it would be so cool to live to be 100 because so I was born in 1989. Mm-hmm. And if I think of people who were 100 when I was born, think of people born in freaking 1889. Are you kidding me? From electricity is a new thing to like Michael Jackson is at the top of the charts on MTV. Are you freaking kidding me? That's a span of technological innovation and human transformation ultimately that I want to see. We've got women's rights. We've got civil rights. We've got automobiles. We have, airplanes. Like, that span is, I think, so inspiring. So I would love to be the, old little withered biddy at 101 years old, in 2089 or 2090, going, oh, I remember a VCR. Anyway.
Holy cow. Just for reference, here are some things that happened in 1889. I just Googled it real quick.
I'm so excited. I love the internet. Go.
Coca-Cola was founded.
Oh.
In Atlanta.
Oh, is that? It probably still had I'm pretty sure the original recipe had straight up like cocaine in it.
I
think that's the Coke in Coca-Cola.
That's lore, right? The Eiffel Tower opened in 1889.
There it is.
It was officially open to the public that year. The Transcontinental Canadian Pacific Railway was finished.
Cool.
We were still building
just
railways.
Transport was starting.
Right. North Dakota and South Dakota were added as the 39th and 40th states.
We only had 40
US.
states in 1889.
Right. Montana came in as the 41st. Brazil was declared a republic.
Hey.
And then the first jukebox went into operation in San Francisco.
Well, hot diggity.
So that's 1889, right? So that's 100 years before you were born.
Yeah.
Leap 100 years to your birth, and then 100 years. It's crazy.
By 1989, we're looking at. Apple was founded. IBM was going. We had. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's absolute. The entirety of Walt Disney's legacy happened in those 100 years. We're big Disney fans. It wasn't born
until 1901, I think.
Yeah, something like that. So in the 100 years that somebody was alive, 1889 to 1989, Walt Disney was born, grew up, invented Mickey Mouse, started a company, created animated features as its own genre, started Disneyland, started Disney World, and passed away. All in those 100. I can't even. Time is an illusion. Nothing is real. And I want to live till I'm 100. That's all I have to say about it. And now you all know Lizzy's longest term goal. But all of this to say, the reason I talked about this was because I was answering the question of what I'm most surprised about. Oh, I was
You're talking
21
about how you were
years
21.
old.
Yes, you were 21 years old.
I was 21 years old, and back in the day, I had graduated college and was trying to live my life. No, it's true though, because I was really good at a syllabus, at GPA, at
checking those boxes.
Checking the boxes. My dad was a professor. I just knew how to. I was good at school. I was really good at school, really good at the system. And so when there was no more system, I became very severely depressed. And that's like, if we're getting real, that was the year I was diagnosed with like severe anxiety and depression. I remember my, therapist, psychologist, whatever. I took, a few tests to like talk about my mental health, whatever. I was only like 2 questions away from a PTSD diagnosis, just from sprinting so fast through life already up to that point. I was that kid who at 13 years old was chomping at the bit to get a part-time job and was so mad that I couldn't because the law says you have to be 16. I just always wanted to be self-sufficient. And the second I could be, I was as much as I could be as a kid. And then the second I really could be, my first job was at Ben & Jerry's when I was 16. I was decorating cakes and making my way of it by the time I left there. And by the time I graduated high school, I was a certified medical assistant working at a doctor's office. And I took off as fast as I could. And it turns out that comes with a lot of burnout. So children, take your time and enjoy your childhood while you can.
Savor. Youth is
just trust
youth
me.
Is wasted
just
on the wrong
trust
people,
me.
they say.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So cross stitching. So I was at a physical therapy appointment because I was imploding, and I saw Martha Stewart magazine, and there was this idea for Stitch People. And it actually, before I jumped into making my own patterns, I went to the store. I was like, oh yeah, cross stitching. I liked that as a kid. And I went to go get like a kit, and I hated them all. I joke now that the only options were like ABC teddy bears and kittens and baskets. That's kind of how I describe generically, all that, the 1990s, 1980s kind of designs, ABC teddy bears, kittens, and baskets. And not only was it not really my style of decor, but they're so complicated. You've got these 5x7, 8x10 pieces that have like 300 colors, and you're switching. I started some patterns like that back in the day when I was younger, and I still haven't finished them. 20-year long projects that one's of like a lighthouse. I know I've talked about this before. A lot of Stitch people say like, oh my gosh, I have an unfinished lighthouse too. And it just was too much. So then when I got to thinking about this family portrait idea, the simplicity of it really appealed to me. Mm-hmm. And so I initially designed all the characters to just stand side by side by side on the same template, meaning I often compare it to the animatronics in It's a Small World, the ride at Disneyland, where you ride a little boat and you visit like all the areas of the world, and you see little dancing animatronics. And all the animatronics themselves are the same. They look almost like little dolls, and they're all the exact same shape and size. But what changes is their hair color, their skin color, their clothes, and that's enough to sort of represent their region. And or those Funko Pop dolls, same thing, or Disney's Vinylmations, same little template on which you make customizations, and then your imagination fills in the rest, right? And that really appealed to me because it was simple. So I just did side-by-side characters and text, and that really fed my creativity, but allowed me to finish a full project in a weekend. And that was a relief because I'm the type of personality, when something goes unfinished, it eats at me, and I feel terrible. I feel like crap. I feel like I have all these undone things, and they live in the back of my head like radio static. So to be able to finish something and have that, I don't know if it's like, endorphins or whatever, dopamine of a job well done, it's finished, I can frame it and be done. That was really satisfying. The reason I bring that up is, so we put out Stitch People into the world. I'm making these portraits, and I see kind of on social media, people are expressing interest in learning. I'm like, great, I can teach you. So I create do-it-yourself Stitch People, and I make the book and kind of try and translate the process that I figured out in my brain to people to help them do it themselves, because I think that's really fun and empowering. I'd love to teach you that. And then we started getting feedback after our first book of, hey, I raise chickens at my house and I keep goats. I'm a bit of a homesteader. can we get farm animals? And it was like, yeah, yes, of course, cool. And actually, the first farm animals book was designed with that template in mind, where a lot of people were like, these animals are so small. It's because I designed it to sort of match that original template where things are kind of the same size. So even though a horse in real life is much bigger than a person, this isn't real life. So we just kind of kept the characters of a similar template. We've since updated those patterns so that you can have more true to Stitch People size comparisons. Anyway, but then we were getting requests for, hey, my dad or my son or my husband's in the military. Can I get an Army uniform or a Marines? Okay, yeah, I'll do those. And then, my so-and-so's a doctor, so-and-so's a judge, so-and-so's a handyman. Can I get patterns for this? And we just sort of, speaking to what you said, Spencer, about the community involvement, it's the community that's helped drive the Stitch People truck down the road. I mean, it's the community's feedback that's really driven what's come next, as far as patterns go. And then people started making them really complicated. And I'll be honest, this is a secret for some of you. That really freaked me out because I was like, no. The point was simplicity. The point was kind of template. The point was just slick, kind of modern simplicity, but not that I was feeling like it was getting out of my control, but that for me, that was like my original intent with it. And so I had to sort of lean into like, wait a minute, not only are people making their own designs, their own unique family portraits, but people are making this entire concept their own. For me, it's simplicity. For other people, it's detail. It's layering family groups within bigger family portraits and adding special stitches to give, make hair look real, to make dog fur look more real, adding backgrounds so that they can commemorate their favorite beachside memories or ski trips or whatever. And then I, okay, great. Now let's make a backgrounds book to help people who are less confident doing those things from scratch on their own. And so we've really just fed the community direction. And that has been really cool to kind of be the mom, if you will, of this group where, Mom, can I have a cookie, please? And it's like, sure, yes, let's make cookies, and to really help people on their way and to take inspirations from a lot of people in the group. And to see how the Stitch People community shares so freely with one another, that, somebody will have an idea and say, yeah, you do it, go take it, do it your way. I love that collaborative, encouraging environment that the Stitch People community sort of embodies. And that has been my favorite thing and my most surprising thing, just like you said, is to watch this incredible community grow. I had previously been and continue to be pretty jaded by social media at large. I don't get it. I feel like I don't do it right, just from a personal level, but the Stitch People community gets it and they're doing it right. And that is a fun place to hang out on the internet. So yeah, that's my very long-winded explanation with 8 million tangents as to
we got there.
The most surprising thing or just the most inspiring thing about what Stitch People has become.
Well, and I think it just goes to show that that's how I think that's how ideas are meant to be, right?
Yeah.
An idea is meant to be built on. It's meant to evolve. It's meant to change, because you have an idea and then someone else has another creative idea, and turns out there's a really cool intersection between those ideas that's an even better idea. And so to see Stitch People really does feel like just a community collaborative effort in so many ways.
Yeah.
And again, I just keep coming back to, I don't know that I ever would have seen that in corporate America. I didn't really ever see that in kind of the startup world, the tech startup world. I think the only place that I would have seen that is in this context. And it is so cool.
It's the best.
I'm the first one to say, I never thought I would be doing cross stitch for a living.
Same. Same.
It's a weird little niche, but
because not only are we doing cross stitch at large, but we're doing cross stitch family portraits, and just that, and that's what we do.
Just that, and it works, and there are enough people who are interested in it that it's so cool. The creativity that happens all around the community every single day. We see posts in the Facebook community that just recently hit 10,000 people. There are 10,000 people
It's
who are in
nuts.
this community and posting things every day and really cool projects and sharing those really heartfelt stories of what it was like to give a 50-person portrait that took them probably weeks or months to give that to grandma for Christmas or something like
Right.
that, and to watch grandma weep as she opens this gorgeous heirloom present. Like it is so inspiring, and it is so invigorating, and it's what gives me the drive, and I know you the drive to like wake up every morning and do more of it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, wake up, I mean, that's variable. I have a very difficult time waking up in my life. Always have, always have. I've seen a lot of doctors, folks. They have no answers for me.
And
Uh,
confirm.
Idiopathic hypersomnolence is one of the diagnoses, one of three, which basically means you're very tired and we don't know why. But, when, when I do get out of bed, it gets me excited. Spence, I'm just going to double check our time. I don't want to talk your ear off all day because I know you have a life and things. Okay. Oh, we are doing great. We are doing great because here's the thing. We've talked a little bit about Stitch People and its origins and its and and I want to get to know you a little bit because
Ooh.
a lot of people have seen you around Stitch People. You're always helping with the live events. You're always hanging out, always supporting. And I would love to ask you a few questions about you. So,
All right, bring it
Spencer,
on.
do you cross stitch?
No, I do not.
I just think that's fun. I think that's interesting.
It has been 10 years that we've been doing this, and
Uh-huh.
I still do not cross stitch. I have cross stitched
Mhm.
before.
Do I have
I
it?
really think I can probably count on both hands
I
the
do.
number of. Do you really?
I do. I have it in my drawer. So for those of you who are watching on the Zoom or on YouTube, I have Spencer's first little cross stitch attempt right here where he learned. He practiced a few stitches, and I keep it
gonna
because
say-
I think it's so great just to have. Here's the
I was
back.
going to say, oh, don't show the back. I was going
not
to say, I can
bad.
count on both hands the number of cross stitches that I have completed in my life.
And they're right here.
And they're right there. And I kind of like it. We've always joked that maybe someday we'll put together a course of like teaching my husband to cross stitch.
Mhm.
For marketing purposes. I think it would go over well.
Yeah.
But also, what is interesting about that is that I can kind of come at most things that we're doing from the perspective of a non-stitcher or like a total beginner. I understand in theory a lot about cross stitching, and I've watched enough classes and I've been on those live events with you as you explain things that I could probably put together a decent portrait.
Sure.
I know that you need to have all your overs and unders going the same direction, and like tension is a thing. Like I understand the basics.
I'm so proud of you.
But when we're putting out a new book and I'm proofreading that book, I get to come at it from the perspective of someone who does not know how to cross stitch. And so I feel like I get to kind of represent some of the newer cross stitchers. And I'll ask you clarifying questions like, this makes 80% sense. Like, how can we clarify this paragraph or this set of instructions for people who truly are brand new and may not have cross stitch experience? And so that's a really fun way to look at this thing. And it makes me feel like I always get to learn,
Yeah.
And
I like that.
So someday I'm sure I'll pick up a needle and stab some fabric. But for now, I'm just enjoying learning theoretically and kind of trying to be that voice of the new stitcher.
Which is really helpful. Spencer and I are very similar in a lot of ways. We are very simpatico, but part of what makes us simpatico is we often can come to an issue from two sides of the same coin. So being on the same coin is what's simpatico, but I tend to have kind of zoomed out, big picture, kind of right brainy thoughts and ideas and solutions. Spencer is really good at honing in on the details, a little more left brain, a little more logistical. We've talked about, we had a really great discussion once a couple months ago where it dawned on us that as far as being observational and intake of information day to day, that I'm definitely more of a quantity over quality as far as being observational is concerned. I'm
Sure.
kind of always scanning. I'm always listening. I can kind of take it all in and I notice everything. I can be like, oh, did you see that thing? Did you see that thing? And you're like, but you're really a quality over quantity. And you might not notice all the things, but you can overhear something specific and like, oh, did you hear so-and-so say that? And I'm like, they were talking, or like, I know they were talking, but I don't remember specifics.
Right.
So we really complement each other in those ways. And like you said, where I am kind of the expert on stitching and you're kind of a newbie on stitching, that really facilitates that well. On a similar line of questioning, do you have any crafts that you enjoy or any other like hobbies or interests that you enjoy that obviously isn't cross stitching?
I love that. The next line of questioning.
Hey.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have hobbies. Growing up, I always loved to like tinker with kind of electronics and stuff. And my dad would give me an old broken VCR and say, here, have at it. And I would start to take things apart. And half the time I could get them back together. Half the time I couldn't. We just threw it out. But I really liked, I liked understanding how things worked. And so kind of my latest hobby is actually motorcycles and kind of motorcycle maintenance and repair and stuff like that. I back in college, I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and didn't really appreciate it for what it was. And so I'm interested to go back and reread that now.
Love that.
Because we got motorcycle certified and bought just a little 250cc Yamaha. And it's been really fun to kind of just tinker with and figure out how to change the oil. Because my dad did computer programming and my mom was a nurse. And so I never really had kind of like mechanical experience as a kid, other than kind of my self-taught, taking things apart. And so it's been really fun to kind of read up on how does a motorcycle work? How do chains work? How does energy get transferred from here to here to here? And so I love to learn just in general. And right now my focus is kind of motorcycles and motorcycle maintenance.
I love that. And I can confirm you've jumped right in. It's been fun to watch and pretty impressive.
Why, thanks.
Let's see. Do you want to tell us about what is something that you can think of that has made you laugh most recently?
Ooh, something that's made me laugh. Yes. Okay. So we're recording this in early November. I'm not sure exactly when this will come out, but Lizzy had her birthday less than a week ago. And for her birthday, I gave her a little Freddie Mercury action figure.
Yes.
A little articulated action figure. It has like multiple heads with different like facial expressions and like different hands. Some are fists, some are, open arms, or open hand.
Some hold it came with two different microphones.
Yeah.
So some are like half open so that you can stick the microphone in it.
And I gave this to Lizzy thinking that like, this could be something that she just set on her desk and like, change Freddie's position every day. And
I
just
love Freddie Mercury.
And just laugh at that.
Yeah.
As soon as I gave it to her, within 10 minutes, she had her camera out. She had a little tripod going and she was making stop motion videos of Freddie Mercury, this little Freddie Mercury action figure. And so I think the thing that made me laugh the most recently was your latest Freddie video, which was Freddie Meets a Friend, I think is what it was called, where Freddie meets a cow. And it just a little like 15-second video. And I watched that and I doubled over laughing so hard.
You did. And I said, is that your real reaction? I don't know why I would question it. But you laughed heartily, and it was so satisfying to me.
It is the way that you can take like a simple thing like that and just turn it into like, there was emotion expressed. There was a journey that we went on in those 15-20 seconds where Freddie was distraught. He needed a friend and he found a friend and he was so excited. And then by the end, like it's just this bond had formed with this cow. And it was just so great. So for those listening, if you haven't seen, go follow Lizzy on Instagram, Lizzy D Bean, and check out her reels where she has.
I'm going to make a highlight out of them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I can bring you laughs and jokes. That's very nice. Okay, here we're going to just kind of get to our wrapping up point with a more philosophical question.
Ooh.
Spencer Bean, what does the word success mean to you?
Ooh.
Pressure's on, bruh.
Success. That's a very interesting question. Well, let me talk you through my thought process first.
Okay.
I think when I first hear success, my first inclination is to go for like productivity and like accomplishments.
Right.
And I think that is how a lot of I think that's how a lot of us are raised, especially kind of in a Western culture, that productivity is king and capitalism is king. And therefore, success equals money, or success equals accomplishments, success equals a really packed resume, that kind of stuff. But I think that works. I think that framework works in kind of the corporate world, and I think it can work in kind of the tech startup world. But my definition of success really has shifted with Stitch People in a similar way that I did not anticipate the community aspect of Stitch People being what it is and being the incredible source of creative power that it is. I did not anticipate success to me meaning the facilitating of creativity. For me personally, that's what I consider success. Everybody is so creative, can be so creative. They are so creative, and some people tap into it more than others. Some people trust themselves with that creative process more than others. But facilitating creativity, I consider to be one of the most successful things I can do. If I can facilitate someone coming into their creative power and bringing something new into the world that did not exist before, to me, that makes the world a better place. That makes people better people. And for me, like that's enough of a definition of success to keep me happy.
I love that. I love it. What? That's it. The end. No more podcasts needed. That's the only nugget we need. Just put it on repeat. I couldn't agree more. I love that. So to finish this out, let's have the rapid round. Spencer Bean, I'm going to ask you some of your favorite things, and you just got to give us your gut reaction. Okay.
Okay.
3,
bring it on.
2, 1. What's your favorite forest animal?
Raccoon.
What's your favorite dessert you've ever eaten?
Chocolate mousse.
What's your favorite movie?
Waiting for Guffman.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
What's the coolest natural wonder you've ever seen?
The coolest natural wonder I've ever seen. I was awestruck off the coast of Sweden. There's a little island called like Sheep Island, basically. And there are these.
Say it. What's the name?
There are these really cool rock formations that kind of like jut straight up out of the ocean. And I remember like sitting on this beach, looking at this going, how did this get here? Like, what in the world? Like, here we are in kind of the middle of nowhere. Like, what are these things? It was so cool.
I love that answer. What's the sneakiest or like worst thing you ever got away with as a kid?
One time I was getting ready for a camp out with my dad, and we were packing the car, and I was packing the hatchet. And for some dumb reason, I was like flipping it in my hand, like, just twisting it, flipping it. And I flipped it once and it sliced my hand on the way down. It's probably like a 2-inch just slice in my hand, pretty deep. But I didn't want to tell my dad. I wanted to go on this camping trip. My mom was a nurse. I didn't want her to be mad. So I spent the whole weekend with my fist clenched to try to get the skin to like graft back together. And it did. And my parents never knew.
I want to insert like cricket sound effect right there. Okay.
I was lucky that who
well, you're
knows
lucky you didn't
what
get
was
freaking tetanus or something.
Who knows what was on that blade?
Like rusty old hatchet.
It was a sneaky, stupid thing for me to get away with.
So
and in
funny.
hindsight, like, what a dumb thing.
That really speaks to who you were as a kid, though.
Totally.
Okay, couple last things. Favorite cereal?
Peanut butter. The Reese's peanut butter.
Oh yeah, and favorite pizza toppings?
Mushrooms and banana peppers.
There it is, folks. Spencer Bean at a glance. I love it. Spencer, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for joining me on the first Stitch People podcast episode.
Truly,
it has been
my pleasure.
What? No, it is my pleasure, sir.
Well, it's a dual pleasure then.
A dual pleasure. A duet of a delightful conversation.
Indeed.
Thank you. And hopefully all you listeners have enjoyed getting to know Spencer a little bit. I had totally forgotten about that Sweden story. I got to know you a little better myself today. So
well, there you go.
I just can't thank you enough. I love you the most.
I love you too.
I'll see you in about 30 seconds.
Yep, sounds good.
Talk soon.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Stitch People podcast and enjoying conversations with Stitch people like you. We would so appreciate it if you could take a moment and subscribe to our podcast, leave us a rating and a review, share it with your friends and family, whoever's going to like it. It will help us shine more cross-stitchy sunshine into the world. You can check out everything Stitch People has to offer, our cross-stitch patterns, books, merch, and more at stitchpeople.com, and connect with us on Instagram and Pinterest. We'd love to see your crafty works in progress. So give us a follow, give us a comment so that we can find you. Lastly, I want to thank all of you in the Stitch People community for your support of us and for your positive and cooperative encouragement of one another. I'd also like to thank the incredible Stitch People team for making all the magic happen behind the scenes. Our fully licensed jazzy tunage was created by Jonathan Boyle, and our sound designer extraordinaire is the one and only Brandon Yost. Have a wonderful day, my friends, and happy stitching. The Stitch People podcast is a production of Beanski LLC and Stitch People. Copyright 2022, all rights reserved.